And we'll back to the ready state. One of the things that we obsess about when we're talking about range of motion of the joints is not just the classic ranges of flexion and extension, right? But we've also got to be accounting for rotation. Now that's obvious in so many of the movements that we do and so many of the cues that we use. As coaches, we have a ton of rotational cues. Armpits forward, elbow in, right? Break the bar, spread the bar, look what's happening to your feet, screw your feet into the ground. Those are all cues about maintaining rotation, especially where the joint is coming in to the torso. Now, one of the things that we try to do is say, hey, look, what shapes give us the best access to our physiology with the full intent that, or full sort of awareness that there are many times where we cannot possibly be in powerful positions, so we have to be in the best position we're able to kind of achieve. Grab a sandbag, grab something awful, grab someone that you're trying to throw, put your paddle in the water in a strange position. At some point, you're gonna have to be really, really strong and capable in a weak position. And to that extent, though, one of the things that we're doing then is, hey, we've got to take a look at this rotation. And so when we put the arm overhead, for example, we know that full range of motion has to include this rotational capacity. These are why we teach our rotation primers, and we're assessing rotation so much as part of our modality. One of the easy tests you can see about some of the choices we make, and remember, all of these things should line up with what we know about the body and how we train the body, but because those are our physical manifestations of the physiology and the expression of coaching and teaching. But you can do this for yourself. What I want you to do is get with your hands straight forward into a push-up position. Don't pay attention to my wonky wrist here. But what I want you to do is, in this position, you can get into a push-up position or not, and shoulder over wrist, I want you to grab the ground and screw your hands into the ground and create as much torsion, as much rotation force as you can. And notice that rotation happens here at the shoulder. Elbow pit is coming forward. You can actually see the rotation through the limb. And when we talk about gripping the bar and breaking the bar, or the way we hold a kettlebell or do a bottom-up press in the kettlebell, a lot of that rotation is already caught in there. It's in the language. So we're seeing that we're constraining the movement or teaching a movement cue to achieve rotation. So rotation without rotation is a torque force, even though you're not expressing that force. It's just torsion through a system. So even as I screw a screwdriver in, I'm still going to see a torque force applied through that handle and shaft of the screwdriver, even though the screw nut may not move, right? Well, the same thing is happening a lot of times when we grab solid implements and we try to create rotation. So with that hand forward, you can measure that. We have our friends at Rotex here. We use this for the lower body a lot, but we also use it for priming the upper body. And you can see that with the hand straight forward, I can create a ton of power and rotation. And as soon as I start to move my hand out a little bit, the same way that you might think the ankle and the wrist are the same, my ability to generate force is greatly diminished, as that shoulder hasn't really changed positions. Notice that my shoulder in this shape, you can kind of see the organization of the shoulder and how much rotation I can create. And when I start to lose that potential by changing my grip a little bit, it's a little bit more difficult for me to create rotation. As soon as I start to turn out much further than that, I'm losing a lot of power. You can see it measured here. This is not faking. I can try to cheat it, but pure rotation at the shoulder becomes more difficult. You can do the same test by getting to a push-up position and creating as much torsion as you're able, and then move the hands out a little bit and see what happens to your ability to create torsion. Now, working in these positions is very valuable. We love to do push-ups in these positions. In fact, you'll see high-level gymnasts will practice their handstands and some work in these shapes because their rotational stability is so diminished. They've got to learn how to create such a stable trunk off a system that isn't very stable. It's very end range. And so what you'll see here is that this starts to kind of aggregate back into this idea that a lot of the stability I create through the shoulder is how my trunk remains stable. These are systems that are connected. So if I am not able to create a very stable shoulder through an object, then the torso is going to have to work much harder at being stiff and in control. And as soon as I am able to do that, you'll see that those systems become linked. So not only do I create the best shape that's available to me through the torso to create torsion, and we know that there are some shapes that start to diminish that rotational power, but my ability to create rotation through a limb also creates stability at the trunk. We call this reciprocal stability. So should you do push-ups in all these positions? Yes, but if you're going for a 1 rep max push-up contest, put yourself into a position where you're giving yourself the most access. You can imagine how this applies to the hip too. Certainly I can jump and land in these positions, but I'm not going to be as stable. I'm not going to have access to the full bounty of my physiology in some of these positions where I become a little bit inhibited, right? We call this positional inhibition. What looks like weakness may be that I'm putting myself into sort of organized shapes that don't transfer to peak or maximal force generation. Now again, there are times to be doing and working in all these shapes, but if we're talking about what shapes are the best, we can suddenly begin to ask ourselves, A, do I have rotation? Can I manage that rotation? Secondarily, what choice am I making? If I have a choice, let's choose the choice that puts me into some of the best, most powerful positions available. And again, hands forward. To wrap up, you'll see that little children will often internally rotate their hands when they're doing planks. And if you've ever worked with little kids, you'll see this. And the reason they do that is this internal rotation means that I don't have to do much work at all. My hand and shoulder naturally want to actually rotate a little bit, and I'm able to create a lot of passive rotational load and ergo stability through the system. It's almost like when we're doing handstands and blocking, you're taught to block in these positions with our gymnasts. You're not taught to necessarily block in some of these shapes. As that I hit the ground, I'm able to capture that rotational stability and rotational spring through the whole system. Even thinking about that little cartwheel map. So again, trying to make sense of some of the cues and some of the ideas that we're seeing here, try to get your athletes to create rotation, put them into less effective positions, and guess what? They're going to have to be much more skilled at the torso and much stronger, and you'll probably see a lot more wonky things. Bench pressing like this is very difficult for one reason. Can't really create rotation off the bar. Understand your shoulders, understand rotation. Let's go set PRs. See you guys tomorrow.